On the very eastern edge of Europe, as the 16th century dawned, a great change was brewing. A transformation that would herald the rise of the Russian Empire and the ruthless extermination of all that stood in its way. At the heart of this tumultuous storm were the Mari people indigenous to the Volga region, and now facing the full might of an empire in their desperate struggle for freedom. The 1552 conquest of Kazan by Russian forces threw the Volga region into disarray, setting the stage for a series of conflicts that would come to be known as the Cheremis Wars, spearheaded by Mari princes. This is the forgotten story of once numerous people and their fight against the shackles of empire at the very gates of Siberia. Among the most captivating leaders of this tumultuous period was a man called Mamich Berde. Born to a Mari father and a Chuvash mother, he ruled over Lower Kakshan and other South Mari areas. A brave warrior, cunning diplomat, and a great general, Mamich Berde would unite the Mari people and lead a formidable coalition against Russia. In 1553, just a year after the fall of Kazan, the rebellion against Moscow was already in full swing, with Mamich Berde at the helm, who established the fortress of Mezh as the rebellion's stronghold. His goals were to reunite the Kazan Khanate and bring back freedom to the people of Volga. Problem was that a Khan had to be Genghis-id. Thus Mamich looked south to invite a new Khan to take the throne. He was sent Alpobay, a prince from the Nogai horde. We came with a mere 300 men. He turned out to be a careless ruler who did nothing but raid Mari areas. Meanwhile, Russia, having recovered from their initial defeats and arrogance, returned to the Volga region with a large force. In the relentless campaign that followed, the Moscow army won several battles. They stormed and burned the rebel capital on Mezh and ravaged the surrounding villages. It was a very brutal campaign that achieved its goals. Around 10,000 rebels, and 2 of the 4 leaders were killed. And by March of 1554, Udmurts and Tatars capitulated to Russia. Faced with a hopeless situation, Mamich Berde, who had by that time risen as the de facto leader of the Kazan revolt, remained defiant and refused to surrender. Adapting to the circumstances, he shifted tactics to guerrilla warfare, exploiting the swamps and forests of the land to harass Russian units, inflicting significant damage upon them. In response, in August of 1554, Tatar generals Kobyak and Mirza Kulai, now loyal to the Tsar, were dispatched on a campaign to quell the Mari resistance. Demonstrating diplomatic prowess, Mamich Berde engaged in negotiations with them and successfully convinced them to rejoin the rebellion. Capitalizing on this newfound unity, he then established a new capital, Chalim, on the Volga the same year. In 1555, Mamich, disillusioned with Khan Apolbey, who had ravaged the countryside he was supposed to safeguard, took decisive action by annihilating his army and beheading him. Following this, Apolbey's head was displayed on a pike as a grim testament, with Mamich declaring, "We invited you to protect our kingdom, but you did nothing but eat our cattle. Now your head shall reign on a pike." Subsequently, in February, Mamich Berde achieved a significant victory by capturing Arsk from the Tsarist forces, an action that further solidified his leadership and prompted the Udmurts and Tatars to rejoin the coalition. However, his attempt in March to coerce the Hill Maris and Chuvashes into the coalition through military pressure ultimately fell short of success. Over time, Russian forces continued their advance. They systematically plundered the lands and built new forts to secure their dominion over these turbulent territories. Amidst this escalating tension, Altish, the Prince of the Hill Maris, extended an invitation to Mamich Berde for negotiations to discuss joining the alliance. Given the dire circumstances, Mamich felt compelled to accept, recognizing the potential to strengthen their cause. Tragically, this overture was a ruse. During the celebratory feast, Mamich Berde's retinue was slaughtered, and he himself was ensnared and captured. On the 21st of March, 1556, he was taken to Moscow for a trial that would include the Tsar himself among its audience. The events of the trial remain shrouded in mystery, but the grim consensus is that Mamich Berde was executed. This treachery dealt a devastating blow to the uprising, for it was not just their leader they lost, but also about 200 of his most adept and trusted warriors during the so-called alliance negotiations. Without Mamich Berde, the affairs of the rebels fell into disarray, and by April the Russians had torched their newly established capital, Chalim. A major victory for the Tsarist forces followed in May in the Arsk region, alongside merciless retaliatory campaigns across the territories still holding out against Russian domination. By the spring of 1557, the once resolute rebellion had been effectively quashed, with the surviving Maris compelled to lay down their arms. The aftermath was grim. Tens of thousands of Maris had perished, and the landscape was scarred with the ruins of hundreds of villages. Despite this, Maris rose up time and time again against the Russian yoke, but to no avail. Each time they were brutally crushed, and with every revolt they were further marginalized. And what followed was centuries of discrimination and suppression. The Maris were systematically displaced from the fertile banks of the Volga, their ancestral lands, and replaced by Russian settlers. They were barred from residing in cities and engaging in metallurgy, a critical part of their cultural and economic identity, and violation of these prohibitions was met with the gravest of penalties, including death. Such was the forgotten story of Cheremis Wars, a poignant tale of a nation that refused to fade silently into the obscurity of night.